What a sad state of affairs when a government limits the rights of anyone to access information. Even worse, though, when it is done on a false premise. Now, we've been following the case of Labor Minister Annika Wells being pressured by eSafety Commissioner Julie Inman Grant to ban YouTube for 15-year-old teenagers. Now, Grant has repeatedly said she's lobbying for the ban because of the evidence.
Well, I don't make determinations or write recommendations to the minister based on whether I keep the public on side. I follow the evidence. And my main concern with these platforms is obviously that harm's happening, but I talked about the persuasive design features. I mean, YouTube has mastered those. That opaque algorithms driving users down rabbit holes that they are powerless to fight against.
Well, Labor and Grant repeatedly refused to show us that evidence. So we lodged a Freedom of Information request, and sure enough, last night the research was released. And what do you know? Grant's main argument about these dangerous rabbit holes and algorithms was not even mentioned in the research. It doesn't say anything about rabbit holes at all. And even worse, the research is just a survey. This entire thing is simply Grant asking children what they think they might have seen which is harmful. It is a very flawed way to do this, and do you know who agrees with me? The authors of the research who published this limitation warning on the work. They wrote, the findings from this research are reliant on cross-sectional self-reported data. This means that the data are based on children's and parent/caregivers' experiences and perceptions as they have shared them with us at one point in time, rather than being based on independent observation or assessment. Now, we were always told that this ban was about grooming, sexual harassment, and bullying. So let's have a look at those figures. Grant's own research shows that while the number of children on Snapchat who claimed they were groomed was a disgusting 23%, the number reported on YouTube was 3%. The exact same rate of grooming in text messages. Should we ban 15-year-olds from texting? Sexual harassment on Snapchat, 35%. YouTube again, 3%. And all other major platforms are significantly higher than YouTube on those 2 points. Your kids are also less likely to be bullied on YouTube than any other major platform. And guess what the percentage was? That's right, again, it was 3%. You are nearly twice as likely to have your kids bullied through text messages than you are by letting them watch videos on YouTube. And I can't believe that I had to say that sentence. Obviously, that was always going to be the case. You have been misled by Grant and by Labor. YouTube is one of the most powerfully creative, interesting parts of the internet. You can learn Michelin star cooking techniques from Marco Pierre White. You can learn the guitar, piano, or the most niche of instruments from the greatest musicians alive today. And more importantly, our kids can learn about the world without us needing to bubble wrap every notion and every debate. But instead of embracing this knowledge, we are trying to create a generation of technological Luddites while the rest of the world evolves past us. Banning teenagers from YouTube because of a survey is no more absurd to me than the notion that a library should be banned because of a book. We have to be better at disagreeing with each other, and we need to stop being so afraid of ideas. Well, joining me this week to discuss is Managing Editor at The Australian, Darren Davidson, and Sky News contributor, Kel Richards. Kel, it's a pleasure as always. Thank you for joining us on the desk. This is a very serious issue, and what has frustrated me in the reporting of our team here at skynews.com.au is the lack of transparency. And we've had to push and ask for this research because we have had here a woman, a bureaucrat who's unelected, stand up at the National Press Club and make these sweeping assertions under the cover that it is based on evidence. And then they only give us the evidence when we basically are taking a form of legal action through the Freedom of Information Act. That's when they release it. And when we get to look at the data, it doesn't confirm what she is saying in the slightest.
Yeah, that's right. Because the mentality behind this is censorship mentality. In the end, the evidence doesn't matter. The survey doesn't matter. She has decided a priori before anything comes in. It's worse than a censorship attitude. This is a book-burning mentality. This is, I'm going to decide which is bad for you. One of the worst things that can happen to the human brain is to contract bureaucratic brain. Bureaucratic brain is a terrible disease, and sufferers from bureaucratic brain are convinced they are the smartest people in the room, they know much better than you, and you just have to do what you're told. And if you insist on knowing why, well, they'll find a reason, but you have to do what you're told because they know best and they're in charge. Now, that's the kind of attitude, that's the kind of mental attitude we're up against. We will work out what is good for you, what is good for society, you will obey. So there's a sense in which whatever data they throw at us is immaterial because they're just trying to shut down the information that people can have, particularly our kids. Our kids get valuable educational stuff off YouTube. So the idea that this one has a reason for existing and there should be a free flow of information terrifies the bureaucratic mind. They don't want that. They want to burn the books. Can I say one of the big worrying things is they start off saying, we want to do this because of sexual harassment or grooming. But it gets wider. It doesn't stop there. Sooner or later, they'll get to the point of, oh, well, that has to be shut down. Why? Well,
that's where she veered into algorithms. And Darren, I'd love to bring you in here because this was the shocking thing for me reading this report, and I have read the report in full. It doesn't talk about algorithms. It doesn't talk about rabbit holes. So when we had this person stand up here and say, well, we've got research that says there are pervasive and these very bad algorithms which are putting our children through rabbit holes, there was no evidence-based reason to say that. Now, she might hold that view, but there was a conflation of the evidence. And we're talking about making a very sweeping legislative change, a very radical change, that I do think is akin to shutting down a library.
Agree. I think anybody that cares about open access to information should be concerned by this. It feels like massive overreach and distracts from genuine online safety efforts. As you've said, I think 3% is the figure for harassment, bullying and other harmful behaviours on YouTube, which is the same percentage for text messaging. And no one is suggesting that we ban text messaging for teens. And as you said, like when you finally got hold of the report, there isn't anything in there about algorithmic rabbit holes. The very reason, the very premise on which this ban is taking place. And yeah, I think it's really, really concerning. And as you've said as well, you know, much of the report itself and the authors themselves acknowledge that this is self-reporting, it's perception. It's not objective analysis. And I think that's a really important point as well.
Yeah, it's such an important point. But look, moving on, and we are going to stay very closely on that issue. But now to the issue of anti-Semitism and the special envoy, Gillian Segal, who has proposed widespread changes, including the ability to strip funding from universities which refuse to tackle the issue. Now, the plan, very interestingly, also mentions potential new powers related to public broadcasters such as the ABC.
And just finally, you spoke briefly about the role of the public broadcasters in your report. What are your concerns with the media coverage of the ABC?
Well, I think that, you know, the public broadcasters, again, consistent with what we were just discussing, are using public money. And they are very important vectors of cultural, you know, development in the country. And we need to see them being very balanced. And putting a case for a particular viewpoint and then in a civil way, the alternative case. And I've had a lot of feedback from members of the community, both the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community, that they don't see that what we see on the ABC is necessarily balanced. And so it's something that I want to look at and monitor and talk to the ABC about and see what we can do to ensure that the Australian public are getting a fair look at any issue from both sides. And that is not to stop civil debate, and it's not to in any way restrict what journalists do, but it's to say, let's look at it from the different perspectives, because then we have a robust democracy.
Let's bring the panel in to discuss. Kel, very interesting comments there. the ABC, I think, would find itself in some difficulties if these powers were to be enacted. Obviously, the big caveat is that Anthony Albanese, even though I think the media, a little bit of misreporting on this one, a lot of people in the media have been saying, well, this is Anthony Albanese's plan to tackle anti-Semitism. He's only said that he'll consider this proposal. So people that want him to do more on this issue, I do think that Anthony Albanese has been falsely given perhaps too much credit. But on the more controversial parts, the universities funding the rug pull if they do something wrong, very controversial. As well would it be if you are an ABC journalist and you're being told to adhere to certain external principles.
Yep. Look, the basic problem here is when we want to talk about some sort of balance, but there is no balance when you represent morality and immorality. And in the end, anti-Semitism is saying kill Jews. That's what it means. On my radio show once, I had a talkback caller who'd lived in Germany for some years tell me that they have stopped using the term anti-Semitism because it's not strong enough and they call it Jew hatred. And you look at the slogans they're using on the street. Now, admittedly, a lot of the people are stupid and don't know them. But, from the river to the sea meant we want Palestine to occupy where Israel is. That means either deportation or death for 7 million Jews. That's what they're saying. There's no balance to that. You can't put a balance and say, no, only kill 3.5 million Jews. There isn't any balance to it. It is morally wrong. The death to the IDF is actually saying kill young Jewish men and women who've been called up to the armed services. That is violent, it is evil, and you don't say we're going to have balance between good and evil. We'll have some evil things on, and they'll be allowed to call for the deaths of some Jewish people.
Yes.
So what the ABC doesn't understand, what the universities don't understand is when something evil is happening, you don't look for balance, you simply say evil is wrong. At some point, a moral stand has to be taken. You can't say these people have to be killed. You can't say the Jewish community is hated and deserves to die. Now, that's just wrong from the beginning to the end. And Albanese is really guilty about this. Albanese has given us words and no actions. Even with this that's come out, and people are saying, oh, very good, Albanese policy, he's still not doing anything. What will he do to implement it? We have no idea. He is inactive, he is doing nothing, he is mouthing words, and what is happening is not a question of balance between do you like Israel or not, it's a matter of evil, of people who want to kill Jews. That has to be stopped, and it has to be stopped strongly. And until that happens, we've achieved nothing.
Yeah, Darren, love to get your thoughts on the broader issues, I think, being discussed in this action plan, but also on Kel's point about Anthony Albanese's role in this and the fact that he hasn't said that he is going to introduce every single measure. There is that I will consider it. He is one step away from it. What do you make of all this?
Well, I feel the recommendations are long overdue, very necessary. I think universities that ignore anti-Semitism do deserve to lose their funding, and the same applies to the ABC. It's taxpayer funded. Its reporting should be balanced. It should reflect the diversity of its audience. I think that's a sentiment echoed by both the Jewish community and non-Australians. We know that from our readers at the Australian newspaper. We get that feedback a lot about the ABC's coverage. And, balanced reporting, civil debate are absolutely foundational to democracy. So let's hope that the recommendations do go ahead. And it is, as I said, it's overdue. It's about time that this very, very serious issue was addressed. It's been 2 years now since October the 7th, and there's not been strong enough action up until this point.
Yep, well, ball's in the government's court now.